Good evening and welcome to Dream Streets. Our guest tonight is Vic Sadot. Welcome to the program.
Good to be here.
Yes.
Good to see Dream Streets happening still
Yes.
after all these years.
All these years. Those of you who have listened to local radio or been at various music concerts will know Vic from the Planet Fold Band. But tonight we're actually going to talk about a former Delaware poet who happens to be Vic's father.
A little heritage tonight.
Yes. And that's Jean-Henri, right?
Jean-Henri Sadot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he was, of course, born in France.
In Béthune in Picardy province in 1920.
1920.
February 1920. And moved shortly thereafter to Normandy, and that's where he actually grew up in the town of Carentan.
Okay. And he was there during the Second World War, correct?
He was started Second World War there, but was in the Army Air Corps, the French Army Air Corps, at the age of 20, and reported to duty south of Paris, maybe 15 miles south of Paris. And Paris was already being taken by the Blitzkrieg. The Nazi Blitzkrieg was already rolling in, so he had orders to flee any way they could. They hopped trains, went on foot to get to the south, where it wasn't occupied for a long time, actually. And
he did some time in the Maquis, right?
Yes, the French resistance was especially strong in the Pyrennes Mountains, in south of Bordeaux and Toulon, and all along the Mediterranean there, in those seaport towns, where the French Navy was still holding sway and actually had not obeyed the order to surrender by the Vichy government set up by the Nazis.
Right. And we're going to talk about the scuttling of the French fleet a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But what brought your father to this country?
Well, by being in the Pyrenees and working with the resistance, then he was not in the Army Air Corps. Actually, he did report to another brigade, a different regiment of the Army Air Corps. But basically, it was a resistance forming there because the Army Air Corps eventually was dissolved into the resistance in that area, as far as I know. And then he went to Toulon and got on one of the ships that got out, went to Algeria, to Casablanca, Morocco, and Dakar, and patrolled in the Mediterranean. And the United States offered free re-outfitting and modernization of ships. So the Glory, came across the Atlantic, stopped at Trinidad, where I think he had that idea for the Moods of the Sea poem. Right. And then he came up to New York and he met my mother, who was an American Navy person. They were called waves back then. Right. She was a wave. And they met on a Broadway bar, restaurant there, and fell in love.
So your mother is originally from Delaware?
She's originally from Landenberg, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah. She grew up and went to school in the Kennett Square area.
And that's how your parents ended up here in the area.
Yeah, the Chrysler plant was the job that my dad held down all of his adult life here. And that's what brought us to Newark, Delaware.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's when your father began writing poetry in Delaware and making him a Delaware poet by default, I guess.
Well, yeah, he did a lot of historical poems, too, and he was served in various roles at the VFW. Over here in the local Newark VFW, and read poems at Cooch's Bridge. Okay. For Loyalty Day.
Okay. And your father's work was published here locally?
He was published in Union Views. He was published in New York Post and in Dream Streets. Right.
I'm glad you came to that because that was quite some time ago. I think Dream Streets number 3, about 22 years ago.
No, I think the reading you're going to play is from back then, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in Target Studio, and that's way back. Keith Moss recorded this for me.
Okay. Tell us about the poem that we'll be hearing in a little bit.
Well, here's a local guy getting in his car every day and going to the local factory. And he's also a poet, so he's describing Iron Hill in very much detail. All right. But then comes that little twist at the end, which I'll leave for you to hear.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and play that then?
Iron Hill by Jean-Henri Sadot. Oh, how often I've stood here staring at this majestic ridge called Iron Hill, blue-hazed in the sun, lying quiet and still, imposing landmark with so much meaning. In the month of May I've often seen her sturdy oak and beech growing with age, and tall trees bursting with tender foliage against the darker hue of evergreen. When at daybreak dawn spreads her rosy light over the dark green woods of Iron Hill, the air's moist, warm, and heavily filled with the woody scent from the mist of night. Once summer's gone, the wandering autumn wind drives sapless leaves to their dark wintry bed, whereas in the frosty skies overhead shines the pale ghostly moon of Halloween. In wintertime, the bare and dreary height is partly wrapped in slowly rolling clouds, but with a northern wind, a snowstorm shrouds and takes the familiar hill out of sight. A small boy once told me that he'd seen some bright-colored birds in soft mossy nests, a singing stream with banks of velvet grass, yet I, to such close place, have never been. There is so much in life for the taking. We see little in nature that is ours. Then, failing to outrun the fleeting hours from all these wondrous gifts, miss everything.
Okay, it's Iron Hill, as read by Vic Sadot, the poet Jean-Henri Sadot.
Yeah, the poet knows the hill well, but through his sons, apparently, and he's too busy going to work to ever visit there. He's never been there.
Never been.
Yeah, and it's right beside Chrysler.
Right.
Chrysler's in the shadow
right,
of the hill.
Right. Let's read some other poems from that particular era, and then we're going to hear some of his poetry set to music. How about that one right there? Okay. While you're looking, I want to remind.
Early Roses in 1940 would be a good one, since we've talked about how France fell so fast.
Okay. While we're getting ready, I just want to remind our listeners that you're listening to Dream Streets. Our guest is Vic Sadot, and we're talking about his father's poetry. And what about this next poem?
This is his poem, thinking back at that feeling, that moment of defeat.
Okay.
Basically, yeah. Early Roses of 1940. Silver pearls on scarlet roses, freshly bloomed in this sun of May, while the breeze gently proposes lovely tunes to our youth at play. Crystal pearls, how you turn to tears, absorbed by the still mellow ground, while the foe crosses our frontiers, and from youth, war fear steals the song. Comes June, the roses shine no more. Roads are crowded with refugees, frail petals felled by a cannon roar, mourn a nation fallen on her knees.
It's poignant. Why don't we listen to one of his poems from a recent CD that you made?
What you got queued up?
Well, you tell me, and I'll cue it up. Which one?
I think White Clay Creek is one of his finest poems. He wrote it at a time when the whole creek area, the whole wilderness area, was threatened with being flooded for an industrial water supply, and people rallied all over. The United Auto Workers Conservation Committee with Don Sharp and Dorothy Williams from the Coalition for Natural Stream Valleys organized all these people, and my father was just one who got active and tried to save the creek, and that poem was his effort to consecrate the area.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about the music. Who accompanies you on this particular?
Roberta Greenspan is on the fiddle. Julius Gordon is on the mandolin, and I'm singing, playing guitar.
Okay. And
it's at a Newark Community Day. It's live, board tape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Brandywine did a good job capturing that Brandywine sound.
Okay. And the song again is, or the poem?
White Clay Creek. I'll be playing that at White Clay Creek soon.
Okay.
No one in town can be certain the road belongs to the creek, or the creek belongs to the road. But having gone that way often, if I'd
I'd only dare to speak. I could judge by my simple code and proclaim the two are one. The road winds along a white clay creek and passes through its darkened woods. Huge rocks lying in the water, whose swift current in mud tries to sink, have long withstood the old creeks and woods. Yet it is here in midsummer the youngsters spend their leisure time with hair tasseled by a cool breeze. They use some long fallen dead tree to reach some summer-made island where they wade and splash as they please. Yes, they wade and splash as they please. Come witness the wonder you may be, a guardian of this precious land, for the children of the human race. These children, blessed may they be, when they take younger ones by the hand to this charming, cherished place, to this charming, cherished place. If you ever ask any wandering child the whereabouts of Second Dam, of Bubblegum or any fall, he'll tell you with a hearty smile on a face smeared with purple jam, from berries picked by the bridge wall, he's been there and knows them all. Yes, he's been there and he knows them all. So it is with the children, sandbars and swimming holes they know. You meet them marching 5 abreast at dusk when the fireflies glisten and the silver moon starts to glow. Their songs reach over the hill crest as they go down that dusty old road, homebound for another night's rest, homebound for another night's rest.
You're listening to Dream Streets, and our guest has been Vic Sadot. We're talking about his father's work, and I guess unless you live under a rock, you would have to come to the conclusion that your father is from France. Mm-hmm. And lately, this country has had some strained relations with France over the current political situation in the Mideast.
I'm sure that would have torn him up. You know, when I was in Normandy, the mayor actually invited me as a son of this town, Carentan, to come and have my 3 cousins and him have champagne. And the cultural director of the town was there, and he asked me how it was to be in the United States now with these anti-French feelings and statements being put out by the Bush administration. And I said, it's, you know, the United States is a pretty tolerant country, actually, you know, as far as that stuff goes. I said, yeah, but it certainly does bother me. Right. And I've, you know, had made my talking points with people around me. You know, some of the things I've heard have seemed utterly stupid. A lot of people made the point that, you know, if it weren't for France, we would not have had a revolution here, or a successful revolution in this own country. A lot of people don't remember that history where Lafayette and at Yorktown there were more French troops than Americans at the final surrender, and it was a rare French victory at sea. Yes, that helped conclude that. And even more recently, as late as the 19th century, when the immigrants were coming from Europe,
that the big welcoming symbol was the Statue of Liberty, which was also a product of France.
Yeah, that moves a lot of people still.
Still. It moved your father.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, he wrote a poem about it.
All right, let's do that one now.
All right.
I'll read this with French and English, since he actually wrote this one in French.
Okay.
And wrote the English below it. La statue de la liberté, the Statue of Liberty. Ce cadeau du peuple de France, this gift from the people of France, dans sa grandeur et majesté, in its grandeur and majesty, est un symbole d'espérance, is a symbol of hope. Les principes qu'elle représente, the principles that she represents, parlent de vraie fraternité, speak of true fraternity. Il offre à l'âme dissidente, it offers to the dissident soul, un esprit de bonne volonté, a spirit of goodwill. Levant sa torche vers le ciel, raising her torch to the sky, elle éclaire le monde entier. She lights up the whole world. Avec son message éternel, with her eternal message, de paix sincère et d'amitié, of sincere peace and friendship. 1966, he wrote that.
Mm-hmm. Your father was quite a naturalist. In his poetry, he often refers to natural beauty. We talked earlier about the White Clay Creek and Iron Hill, and all these places are places of still places where trees grow and still have a lot of their early character. I mean, Iron Hill still has a park in it.
For him, it was like an adventure to explore the United States, and that meant explore the wilds too.
Right.
Take his kids out to walk some wooded path.
Right.
And there was some pretty happy times.
Right. Some of that really inspired your father, some of the natural settings.
Yeah, he wrote about a lot of the places in the area, like we've already done Iron Hill and White Clay Creek. He wrote Persimmon Run. He wrote Wintertime in Rittenhouse Park. He wrote Summertime Sunset, too. I'm not sure where he was thinking of that one. But you want to do that one?
Yeah, let's do that.
The summer sun of a late afternoon slowly declines over the wooded crest. It disappears behind the trees, and soon, with sanguine light, floods the peaceful forest. The green branches turn to darker foliage, while the big red sun continues to sink. It even looks like the woods are ablaze, as the blue skies change their color to pink. In the glassy waters of a still pond, the swans glide by among the lily pads, while turtles on their logs that are unbound watch the gorgeous sunset from their homestead. Shining out in the violet-purple skies, Venus appears where once the sun had shone. A light breeze brings relief, and nature sighs as the heat cools off with the sun now gone. There's a rustle in the leaves of the trees, absorbing freshness for tomorrow's heat. Evening shades spread their veil through a just-felt breeze. The silver moon shines with a haze around it, as works of divine art in the twilight. A dense mist will conceal the meadow soon. I shall stare a while at the star-filled night and hold a conversation with the moon.
You brought more poetry in than we can use, actually, and I want to make sure that I get some of the poetry that your father did that you would like the audience to hear. Okay? Let's read some more of your father's poetry before we run out of time. And I know you had some favorites there.
How about Blizzard? This one's a nice little short one about the wintertime, and I think it's clever.
All right.
The wind had blown all through the night, and the blizzard had buried deep the old village under the snow. It had made use of all of its might to interrupt an old man's sleep and make him peep at the window.
You're listening to Dream Street, so we're also listening to some of the poetry of Jean-Henri Sadot, Vic Sadot's father. And we're going to try to get a couple more in, okay?
All right, let's, Little Girl's Bedtime is a real cute one. You see the father here, and this is dedicated to Marie Sadot. When we reach the end of the day and the Sandman is on his way, the little girl with lovely hair prepares her dolls with loving care. Saying good night to Mom and Dad, with her dollies she goes to bed. The living room, through her absence, still shows the signs of her presence. A few toys have been left behind, and some of them are hard to find. It is not long before I hear the sound familiar to my ear, the patter of her little feet, almost as soft as my heartbeat, reveals that she is not sleeping. To find out what she is doing, I quietly walk upstairs unseen, and there I find my little queen, soap in her hair and even cream. Her face as straight as a sunbeam. But her problem is soon over. She reminds me of her prayer. Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here. Then she gives me a real big hug. I fix her bed to make her snug. As I kiss my precious jewel, I think, she's my guardian angel, and how I wish I could remain within her little feet's domain. At each day's end I could be seen away from the quicksands of sin.
Okay, we're going to listen to another poem that you put to music. And this probably will be our last selection before we have to say our goodbyes.
Well, thanks so much for helping me share John Sadot's poetry.
Right. What is this next piece that we're going to hear?
Are you going to play the Moods of the Sea?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is recorded. I put it on a little CDR that I print out on my computer. Mm-hmm. You can burn CDs at home now. It's called Songs of the Seasons. This one's called The Moods of the Sea. I believe it's about that time in Trinidad where it was so peaceful, and yet they had to go back to the war.
Okay.
That's what I think he's thinking.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And the name of the song is?
Moods of the Sea.
And it's based on a poem by Jean-Henri Sadot.
Mm-hmm.
When a breeze is passing silently, the waves are gently rolling. When the sun has risen high enough to burn off the morning haze, and seagulls skim out over the surf in the thin Arizona days. How rough, how mad the sea can be when her boot takes an angry spout, and the ship is staggering dizzily, and soars on the heavy swell. When out of the roaring darkness the gusty winds batter the prow, in phosphorescent restlessness the great waves burst on the bow. Haven is the blue lagoon of a green tropic island, where the warm waves in mid-afternoon bathe pearly shells and silvery sand, where the sheen is shining off the far-flung sea, our boats anchored safe in the bay. It dazzles my eyes, entrancing me, and I wish in a way I could stay. I wish in a way I could stay, and I wish in a way I could stay.
Moods of the Sea by written by Jean-Henri Sadot, performed by Vic Sadot.
And I translated that back into French and sang it in Normandy just June 21st when I played for the Festival of Music at my dad's hometown. Mm-hmm. So
well received.
And yeah, I enjoyed playing that for them, and I had a good time in his hometown.
That's great. You've been listening to Dream Streets. My guest has been Vic Sadot. We've been talking about his father's poetry and reading some. I want to thank you for stopping by. It's been a great program.
Thank you for doing Dream Streets and for including everybody in the community like this. Appreciate it very much being part of it.
All right. That's it for Dream Streets.